In this video, I'm gonna talk about Chapter 3 of Genki. The first section is verb conjugation. There are two types of verbs in Japanese. One is ru verbs, the other is u verbs. Those verbs conjugate or take various forms. In this section, we're gonna learn three of them. The first is dictionary forms. Dictionary forms are the most basic forms, and from dictionary forms, verbs conjugate to various forms. We're gonna learn present tense affirmative forms and present tense negative forms. Okay, first let's look at how ru verbs conjugate. 食べる to eat becomes 食べます and 食べません. And the part of the verb 食べ is called the stem. Next, 寝る to sleep becomes 寝ます 寝ません. Here, ね is the stem. 起きる to wake up, 起きます起きません. The stem is 起き, and 見る to see or to watch becomes 見ます見ません. The stem is 見. So what's the rule here? To go from dictionary form to present affirmative, we drop the final ru and add masu for present affirmative. And from dictionary form to present negative, we drop the final ru and add masen. Okay, next let's look at how u verbs change. 行く to go becomes 行きます and 行きません. The stem is 行き. 飲む to drink becomes 飲みます and 飲みません. The stem is 飲み. 話す to talk or to speak becomes 話します話しません. The stem is 話. And 帰る to go back becomes 帰ります帰りません. The stem is 帰り. Okay, what's the rule here? Well, to go from the dictionary form to present affirmative, here we have 行く IKU and present affirmative 行きます. So we change the final U to I and add ます. Similarly, 行きません. So the final U the final U in the dictionary form becomes I, and we add ません for present negative and ます for present affirmative. Next, 飲む to drink. Present affirmative is 飲みます. Present negative 飲みません. So again, we change the final U to I and add ます for present affirmative and ません for present negative. Okay, 話す becomes 話します話しません and 帰る帰ります帰りません. Okay, next we have two irregular verbs. する to do becomes します shimasen. The stem is shi. Kuru, to come, becomes kimasu, kimasen. And the stem is ki. Okay. And those two irregular verbs are also used to form compound verbs such as 勉強する to study and 留学する to study abroad. So usually in compound verbs, the part before する can also be used as a noun. So 勉強 is a noun which means study. But when you add する, it becomes a verb to study. The same for 留学する. 留学 is a noun which means study abroad, and 留学する to study abroad. And compound verbs conjugate just like する. So 勉強する conjugate to 勉強します、勉強しません. And 留学する、留学します、留学しません. Likewise, 来る compound verbs also conjugate just like 来る. Okay, let's note this verb, 帰る. This is an う verb, but it ends with る. So there are some う verbs which end with this hiragana る. Therefore, it's important to memorize each verb as a set. Instead of memorizing just the dictionary form, try to memorize the dictionary form and the present affirmative tense. Because there are some う verbs which end with る such as 帰る. So if you just look at 帰る and think this is a る verb, then you'd be conjugating 帰る to 帰えます and 帰えません. But that's not true. 帰る is a う verb, so it has to be 帰ります and 帰りません. Okay, let's do some exercise. Let's try to conjugate each of those verbs into present tense affirmative and present tense negative. First, 書く, which is a う verb meaning to write. 書く becomes 書きます for present affirmative, and 書きません for present negative. Next, 着る. It's a る verb meaning to wear a shirt or jacket. 着る, it's a る verb, so it becomes 着ます and 着ません. So dropping る and add ます and ません. Next, 履く. It's an う verb meaning to wear pants, socks, and shoes. So to wear something below your waist. 履く becomes 履きます and 履きません. So here we change the final U to I, so く becomes き and add ます and ません. Next, 投げる becomes 投げます and 投げません. 取る is an う verb meaning to take. So 取ります、取りません. Next, 足す. It's an う verb meaning to add. So 足す becomes 足します and sorry 足しません。Okay, let's go to the next section. Okay, this section is about verb types and the present tense. In section 1, we learned present tense affirmative form and present tense negative forms. Let's talk about exactly when we use present tense. The present tense of action verbs either means 1. A person habitually or regularly engages in those activities. So it describes your regular activities. Or present tense can mean a person will or planning to perform those activities in the future. In other words, we don't have a future tense. We still use a present tense form to talk about our future plans. Let's see how that works. First, habitual actions. I often watch TVs. 私はよくテレビを見ます。見ます is a present tense affirmative form of 見る to watch, and we add this frequency adverb よく often. Next, ケンさんは時々朝ごはんを食べません。So 食べません is present tense negative form, and we add this frequency adverb 時々 sometimes. Okay, how do we use present tense in future action? Let's look at an example. I will go to Kyoto tomorrow. We say 私は明日京都に行きます。行きます is present tense affirmative, but by adding this word 明日 tomorrow, it indicates I will go to Kyoto tomorrow. Similarly, はるかさんは今日うちに帰りません。So 帰りません is present tense, but by adding a time word 今日, we know that Haruka will not return home today, which we are talking about something in the future. And in later chapter, actually in next section, we're gonna talk more about those particles o and o, ni, and so on. So here, if you can understand that how present tense can be used both for your habitual actions and your future actions, that's good. Alright, section 3, let's talk about particles. Nouns used in sentences generally must be followed by particles in Japanese, which indicate the relations that the nouns bear to the verbs. Using correct particles is extremely important, as use of an incorrect particle makes it very difficult for the listener to understand the meaning of the sentence or even completely change the meaning. In this section, we learn 4 particles: o, de, and ni, and e. Okay, first, let's talk about the particle o. O indicates direct objects, the kind of things that are directly involved in or affected by the event. We also have this o, and this is kind of the regular o, and this one only used as a particle. Okay, I often drink coffee. 私は よくコーヒーを飲みます。So this を indicates coffee is the object of your verb, which is to drink. Notice that the particle always tells you the role of the previous word. Whereas in English, let's say I go to school. To is the particle and it describes the role of the following word. School, that's the destination of your movement to go. But in Japanese, the order is flipped. The particles always tell you the role of the previous word. Alright, next. 私は音楽を聴きます。So, お here implies 音楽 is the object of the verb to listen. Alright, next particle で The particle で has two meanings. One, indicating where the event described by the verb takes place. And two, by means of. Okay, first, place. 美穂さんは図書館で本を読みます。So you see again, we have a object particle which indicates book, 本 is the object, and we have で which indicates 図書館 is where the action to read takes place. Next, 私はうちで so it implies うち home is where the action takes place, and お implies テレビ TV is what you watch. Alright, next, で is also used by means of. For example, 日本人は箸で食べます。箸 is chopsticks. So this で implies by means of chopsticks, Japanese people eat. Similarly, 私は車で行きます。It implies I go by means of a car. Okay, next, the particle に。に has many functions, but here we will only learn two. First, the goal of movement. And second, the time at which an event takes place. First, goal of movement. 私は今日学校に行きません。So this particle に implies 学校 is the goal of movement. 私は家に帰ります。So 家 is the goal of movement. Okay, next, time. ともきさんは日曜日に大阪に行きます。So this the first に implies on Sunday your action takes place, and the second に implies Osaka is the goal of movement. So you could have more than one に in the same sentence. Next, 私はいつも usually 10時に寝ます。 So に implies 10時 10 o'clock is when you fall asleep. Alright, and approximate time references can be made by substituting ごろ or ごろに for に. So ごろ means about. For example, 私は7時ごろに帰ります。Okay, and some time words are used without any particle. And we're gonna discuss exactly when we need the time particle に and when we don't in the next section, section 4. Okay, and the last particle is え. This is hiragana へ. This is hiragana へ, but it's pronounced as え when it's used as a particle. The particle え also indicates the goal of movement. For example, I am going to a river today. 私は今日川へ行きます。So え here indicates 川 is the goal of movement. Next, 来年日本へ行きます。I'm going to Japan next year. So え here indicates 日本 is the goal of movement. In the sense of the goal of movement, this particle え and に which we learned, they are interchangeable. Okay. Let's do some exercises. Sorry, it's kind of loud outside. I'm going to close my door. Okay, it's still loud, but it's better. Okay, first, I read a book at the library. So, 私は topic particle indicating I is the subject or the topic. 図書館 library and the place particle で 本を the object particle 読みます。So 私は図書館で本を読みます。Next, I listen to music at home. 私は home 家で音楽 music を聴きます。Notice that whenever there is a noun introduced in a sentence, we need a particle to describe the role of the particle of the noun in a sentence. So 私は wa indicates 私 is the topic. 家で de indicates 家 is the place where my action takes place. 音楽を o indicates 音楽 is what I listen. And then 聞きます。Alright, see I play tennis on Sunday. 私は sorry, Saturday. Saturday is 土曜日 and we need the time particle にテニスを we use the verb to do. So play sports, we use the verb する to do. So 私は土曜日にテニスをします。Alright, D. I go to school at 8 o'clock. 私は8時 G is the counter for time. 8時に time particle. 学校に the goal of movement and 行きます。Alright, E. I sleep at 11 o'clock. 私は11時に寝ます。So in this case, there is no object. Alright, section 4, time reference. There are two categories of time words for which we always need a particle. One, days of the week, like on Sunday, on Monday, on Tuesday. And two, any numerical time expressions like at 10:45 or in September, we always need a time particle に. For example, 月曜日に寿司を食べます。We always need に here. 9時15分にオフィスに行きます。私は9月にメキシコに行きます。Okay, and we don't need the particle に with 1. Time expressions defined relative to the present moment, such as today and tomorrow, or next week, last week, this year, next year, last year. Though for those words, we don't need the particle. And 2. Expressions describing regular intervals, such as every day and every Monday, every morning. Those words don't need a particle. And then いつ, the word for when. For example, 明日行きます。I will go tomorrow. 毎朝 every morning 何時に起きますか？いつご飯を食べますか？ Alright, and we normally don't use に with let's say parts of a day like in the morning or at night and the word for the weekend. However, depending on the style and emphasis of the speech, those words can be followed by the particle に. Okay, section 5, invitation. You can use a verb in the long present tense negative form plus the question particle か to invite someone. For example, would you like to have dinner? 晩ご飯を食べませんか? So here, 食べません, this is the present tense negative form. And if you add か, question particle, 食べませんか is an invitation. Would you like to play tennis? テニスをしませんか? Alright, let's try to translate those three sentences. Would you like to see a movie? Movie, 映画 So 映画を見ませんか? Would you like to come to my house? 私の家に来ませんか? Would you like to talk at a coffee shop? コーヒーショップで話しませんか? Alright, section 6, frequency adverbs. In the previous section, we learned this word, よく and 時々, but here we learn 3 more frequency adverbs. Every day, 毎日 and often, よく sometimes, 時々 never or not at all, 全然 not often or not very much, あまり The last two adverbs, which describe how infrequent some action is, are used in a negative sentence. For example, 私は時々図書館に行きます。So 時々 sometimes, and frequency adverbs do not take a particle, so you can just put that into a sentence. I don't watch TV at all. 私は全然テレビを見ません。So 全然 goes with 見ません negative. Okay. 弟はあまり勉強しません。So あまり not much or not often, they go with a negative verb, which is 勉強しません. Alright, that's it for this chapter.